Oh my goodness, Dustin Kava. It is a Monday night. It is 6 p.m. on the East Coast time. And your boys, Wehman and Dustin Kava from Wayward Media from the Because Cannabis podcast. Brand new episodes every single Wednesday on YouTube and every Thursday on Spotify and anywhere that you listen to your audio podcast. That's what we do here at Wayward Media at the Because Cannabis podcast. Weekly conversations with amazing folks who are working in, around, near, adjacent, in some way, kind of shape or form to the cannabis industry. My name is BC Wehman. That is Dustin Kava. We're talking issue 2 tonight in Ohio. Dustin, the day you've talked about, the day you've been chirping about for a long time is finally here tomorrow. Dustin, you fired up or what?
Yeah, I'm super fired up.
Heck yeah. We got a great show here, everyone. We got some amazing guests that we're going to run through in the next 2 hours. We have some amazing folks on here that are going to talk through. We're going to open here in just a little bit, speaking with Tim Johnson, someone who has worked hard, who has toiled on the legislative level to bring issue 2 to the forefront. So we're going to have Tim come on. We're going to talk through some of the main big highlight and bull points of issue 2 to open the show. And then we're going to have a slew, a who's who, all sorts of rhymes, words that go like that. Easy for me to say. That's what happens when you go live. We're going to have John Pardee here. We're going to have Gabriel Dean from Medicaid OH here. We're going to have Tyrone Russell from the Cleveland School of Cannabis, Dr. Bridget Williams, Kevin W. Roach, Andrew D'Angelo from Andrew D'Angelo Consulting around 7 p.m., Lenny Berry, all sorts of great folks here to talk through this, Dustin. But I got to tell you, I am super excited right now as we head to tomorrow that finally, Dustin Kava, the season that has been perplexing me, something that has really attacked us, something that has been up in our business, something that just won't let it go, is finally coming to an end tomorrow. The days are over. The end is nigh, Dustin, for yard signs and unwanted telemarketing, man. I am over it. I am not a yard sign person. I understand that we want issue 2 to pass and all those other things. I don't put it in my yard. I just don't like it. I don't like all the yard signs. I have JD Vance, I think, on speed dial right now. He's texting me so much, people. It's a little bit insane with the text messages, with the yard signs. Dustin, I'm hosting a live show on YouTube right now talking issue 2. So I'm proudly out of that cannabis closet, but I'm just not going to put it in my devil strip. You know what I mean? That's just how I roll, Dustin Kava. How do you let your cannabis flag fly? All the way or discreetly?
I mean, it's hard to be discreet when you look like me,
Super hard to be discreet.
But at the same point, I don't know. I kind of feel left out this year. I didn't get any text messages for tomorrow. And so I kind of feel like, I don't know. They don't love me. They don't love me enough to want me to support their cause.
I don't know. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it's money well spent in another area. I got to say, if I have one thing that really bothers me, it's all my messages are all about the no's. Like, I've not got any issue 2 yes text messages. We got to work on that, people. We got to get that stuff going. We got to get better at advertising. I'm getting a lot of no's. And so we need to change that around. We need to make this a yes. And that's what we are here to do tonight. Dustin Kava, for the next 2 hours. We're going to talk issue 2, and let's bring our first guest right on to the show. I always love it when they're not looking. Tim, don't worry. Everyone gets brought in when they're not paying attention. That's how we roll here on the Because Cannabis podcast. Tim Johnson, Cannabis Safety First at the legislative level. Why don't you give yourself a quick introduction, Tim, and then let's talk through issue 2 and what it means to Ohio.
Well, first, Dustin, we do love you. We're glad you're here. BC, you're correct. My name's Tim Johnson. I am co-authored the white paper for the creation of the medical cannabis program and the hemp program that Ohio has. I currently still work at the State House down there a couple of days a week whenever they'll let me in, and do advisory work with the legislators on creating language and working with various bills from criminal justice reform, drug policy reform, law enforcement reform, civil justice reform, and so on. So I've kept my nose for the last 10 years to the books, so to say, for legalizing cannabis in Ohio, starting back in the early days of 2015, working through that and clear up to where we are today. So happy to be here.
Are you excited about tomorrow? I mean, I know you're excited, but everyone's a little excited. That's pro issue 2. But maybe it's more of, are you kind of pinching yourself thinking, my gosh, tomorrow morning, maybe you early voted, but technically tomorrow morning, Tim, you get to wake up put the keys in the ignition, drive to wherever they move to your voting place this year. I'm looking at you, Ohio. Drive to their place of vote for yes, cannabis adult use. It's it kind of like gets me a little giddy right now. I'm a little I'm happy.
Yeah, I'm extremely happy. I mean, I got to vote in 2015. Of course, we know what happened there. But as for tomorrow, 48 years of my life, I've been a part of the cannabis industry from one entity to the other, from the participation in it, the creation of what we have now, the enforcement of it with my background. So I have some deep roots in understanding the realm from the inside to the outside of cannabis legalization coming to Ohio. And for me, it's something I really never thought I'd see in my lifetime. So I'm glad that it's coming for several reasons. And I'm sure we'll get into all of those. But yeah, this is something that's been way overdue, clear back since the 20s and the 30s, when a lot of the problems and the so forth that we have with cannabis nowadays.
Can you share some of the potential impacts that you do think would happen should issue 2 pass tomorrow?
What will happen is there'll be a creation, and I got full faith. I'm gonna be optimistic here. I do believe it's going to pass. It's going to go to the State House then, because it is an initiative, not an amendment. The General Assembly, the legislators, being both, the Senate and the House, will be looking at this language diligently, and there will be some changes made. I just hope they don't chop it up too much. I'm hoping that we do have a House Bill 168 currently at the State House, is similar, almost a mirror to issue 2. So, and that's a bipartisan bill. So that's hopefully some of that is going to filter in. I think that'll cover us a lot. And there was a reason for putting both of those together. But my biggest thing with this is, it's not about the money that the state's going to bring in for it, or the economic impact. I'm good with that and so forth. It's about criminal justice reform, something that's long overdue. And underneath that topic, there are a lot of things that need to be corrected.
All right, why don't we do that? We have some folks, by the way, watching live on YouTube. We're live on Facebook. We're live on LinkedIn. We are live all over social media. Feel free, put a comment in there. We'll bring some up. Thank you, Priscilla Harris, Crystal Chronic, Ohio, as well as Black Swamp Outdoors TV. Getting on there. Appreciate your comments. I want to do this, Tim. I want to bring up, before we bring in our next guest here, let's bring up put together a little slideshow for the audience, Tim. It's only about 6 or 7 slides, but basically this highlights all of the main issues that have been written into the ballot initiative that we are going to be talking about, that we are going to be voting on tomorrow. So let's go through this, kind of break some of these down. If you have questions in the live stream, please put it into there. But let's go through this, right? And so really what we're looking at tomorrow, issue 2, thank you to the Coalition to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol, Tom Herron, and all the hard work that they have done to bring this. But essentially what we're looking at is for Ohio to become the 24th state to become legal adult use. Almost halfway there, living on a prayer. What we're going to get is adults 21 and over to buy and possess up to 2.5 ounces of cannabis flower and up to 15 grams of extract. Did you say that's a fair kind of approximation of what issue 2 is?
Yeah, and let me give a kudos to Tom, a shout out to Tom. Tom's worked very hard. I know about as long as what I've been doing this on trying to bring legalization to Ohio. And I think this may be his third attempt, maybe his 4th attempt to try to get something on. So he's very persistent in getting this done. Of course, him and I don't always see eye to eye, but that's okay. We're after the same goal, and that's for the legalization of cannabis. We just have different interests in as far as what's going to happen. But what we're seeing here is one of the biggest misconceptions in what we're as far as what issue 2 is. Issue 2 is, once it's passed, goes to the General Assembly, they get done with it, and it becomes law. The law will be able to become a law in 30 days. The problem is that law doesn't have any rules or regulations under it yet. So that's what has to be promulgated. The rules and regulations, the guidelines for the program, those amounts and those limits right there are for possession if you're out in the community. Of course, you can have more than that within your residence.
All right, well, let's do this. Let's keep walking through some of the areas we're going to talk about, and we'll get to that. We got some questions. King Drilla talking about kind of how quickly it's going to take for the transition from medical to adult use. Let's save that for a little bit, but let's go some of these areas here. Once again, kind of basically taken in straight from the bill that is written and what we're looking at. So one of the first main objectives is, if you are familiar with OACORC 3796, those are the current kind of administrative guidelines, the rules, the regulations, formally the bill that's now written in there of what the medical program is. And so it's going to go within to the current 3719, which is the controlled substance definition. It's going to take marijuana, kind of make it cannabis adult use. So it's going to redefine it. And I know some people get confused about that, but that, for example, was a big part of the hemp program. We had to redefine less than 0.3%, THCD9 as hemp and not cannabis. So the definition part, even though it seems mundane, that's something that's usually a sticking point, because I feel like it is kind of the biggest point of here is we're redefining what marijuana or cannabis is in Ohio.
Yeah, 3719 is the definition for controlled substances, and I don't see so much of the true definition of it changing under 3719. What we will see is that the issue 2 will create the 3780 chapter of the revised code, which is where all the rules, guidelines, and laws pertaining to that will be. And of course, in the illicit market that will still exist, if my mind serves me right, 2925 and 2929 in the Ohio Revised Code will cover the illicit market still. So yeah, this is where we're going to be looking at.
And then here's one of the biggie, right? We've had a recent readjustment within the medical program. The Department of Commerce role has shifted, and kind of the medical and pharmacy boards. We've had some adjustments in the 3 or 4 years since the program's been rolling. We're going to create the ominously, easy for me to say, sounding Division of Cannabis Control, right? The DCC. I'm already trademarking that. We're going to call it the DCC here. The Division of Cannabis Control is going to kind of be created, kind of be the overseer of this program. And there's the ones, right, Tim, who are going to start to then write these rules, write these regulations, and kind of make the rules. And this is where I feel like we want to make sure we understand how this is created. Who is the Division of Cannabis Control? Do we know yet?
That hasn't been created yet. Issue 2 is basically the guidelines for the actual law, the actual rules and so forth that will be created. The problem with the cannabis control right now, I hate to step on you there, BC, but I'm not sure that's going to stick. Under House Bill 33 this year, our glorious governor slipped in a section in there called the Marijuana Control Board to be established. That's been approved already. So I see that possibly being the language, the title of that office that the legislators stick with. And there are tax reasons for that. There's a tax door in there for the general fund, short and sweet. So I think that's going to be the main thing. The Board of Pharmacy is being eliminated, with the exception of the ORS, your automated prescription writing section they will still control that. They just won't have control over the commerce side of dispensaries and so forth. And then the Marijuana Control Board will work under the Chamber of Commerce or the Department of Commerce, but they will control the entire program as one entity.
All right, excellent. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop our share right now. We'll get back to this. We'll kind of keep hitting this as we go through this, but let's do this. Let's bring one of our guests in. Let's keep the panel going because we got a bunch of folks lined up here ready to talk. Let's bring in John Pardee. John Pardee, how are you doing today? John Pardee is with the Natural Therapies Foundation.org, also with the Pardee Environmental Group. John, welcome to the show. How are we doing today?
Doing well, BC. How are you, sir?
Good, good. All right, let's talk issue 2. Why is it important to you, John? Why are you fired up about tomorrow?
Oh, well, so many things. I got involved in activism after my son was involved in a major car accident, and he needed, a safe, pain reliever that wasn't going to, affect him the way opioids have negatively affected so many Ohioans. And so that's why we got active. I actually sent my son out to California, where he became a cultivator. While he was out there, we got busy trying to legalize medical here in Ohio. And although we do have medical here, I think the program would be stronger with adult use, because it's fairly restricted right now. Even if you talk to a number of patients who have what should be qualifying medical conditions that don't qualify because the program is so restrictive. I think if you open it up to adult use, a lot of those problems go away. A lot of the fear tactics that are being spread by the folks who are opposing this issue are going all the way back to the 1920s and whatnot, and using some of the most the tried and true worn out talking points about prohibition, when all the facts and the science really are on our side. I'm an environmental health and safety guy, and I wouldn't be backing anything that I didn't feel was safe and effective. And that's all the science seems to prove that. And, we are, if we're supposed to be a free people in a free society, we should be able to decide, our own, medical treatments. And even if it's just for, adult use, I mean, that's our decision. It's our body, our ability to choose what we put into it. And so I just think on a purely American liberty component, which I think is very important, we need to have this. This is, for the folks who are opposing it, who are, supposedly be, small government folks, they're really, not, practicing what they preach. And so I think it's time that, especially when it comes to something that's, safe and effective, they really shouldn't, have such an overbearing say in how Ohioans carry out their lives.
Let's talk about some of this misinformation that is going around. I have seen a few ads, and I did read, I've seen a couple things, but I'm curious if it's the same rhetoric that's been said for the last 30 years, what is it that it's effective? Is it why do they keep using these bullet points that seem to be so easily knocked down or so easily proved wrong when it's everybody has the internet? I mean, how is it that, why do they keep going that route? What makes their language still seem valid to them?
Well, they're kind of a one-trick pony. Once the prohibitionists had their talking points, they don't want to get away from them. I'll tell you a funny story. When I was with Ohioans for Medical Marijuana back in 2016, I was a spokesperson for that group, and I was called, and they said, "Hey, the state is having they're having their annual state commerce meeting in Columbus, of all the biggest businesses in the state of Ohio." And said, "Hey, can you go down and talk on our behalf?" And I said, "Sure." And so I went down there, and I was in the waiting room outside, and I could hear the person who was speaking in front of me talking. I go, "I know that voice. Who is that?" And it was that same nasally tone. And someone opened the door, and I peeked in, and sure enough, it was Attorney General Mike DeWine was in there giving his typical, it's a gateway, medical is a scam, all this other stuff. I had no idea that I was going to be giving the rebuttal to the Attorney General, soon to be, governor of the state of Ohio. And what was really interesting is I went into there and I gave my presentation, and afterwards, I can't tell you how many business leaders and folks came up to me and said, "Thank you for coming down here. I can't, we didn't know anything about what was going on." It really comes down to education. You said, "You really helped us understand this. This is something," because I told them basically, we want to be partners. We want safe streets. We want safe schools. We want safe workplaces just like anybody else. And there's a way to do that without maintaining prohibition. And so that's really what it boils down to is everybody coming together and coming up with rules and regulations that allow for safe access and safe use, without causing the problems that they can continue to, say is going to happen. And it hasn't materialized in any other state that has adult use cannabis.
It seems really short-sighted when I know that my 10, 11, and 12-year-olds seem to be perfectly educated in the benefits of cannabis, and not even coming from a household and a family who has seen, a massive change in good. It seems like I can't understand the mind of a politician who, or even a business owner today who just is feeling I'm not educated enough, or I'm surprised when I hear some information about it. I mean, this is decades and decades coming, and it just seems like the lazy man's out to say, hey, thanks, there's the information you presented me is just so profound. I just can't believe that it's there and that you finally spoke it. It seems like it's just another way of stalling to me. It just seems like another way of saying, oh, I just learned about this now. Now let me put 4 years to put it into effect. Now let me take my sweet ass time to digest everything and come to grips with it, when it's like they've all known it. It's a weird dichotomy to me.
Well, there's also a financial component into it too, because there are a number of institutions that actually make money on prohibition. Some police departments, based on the seizure rules here in the state of Ohio, they can make lots of money. In seizures. The drug treatment in lieu of, there are folks who have always been against legalization because they want to be able to have the courts forcing people into drug treatment programs for cannabis, when cannabis is, one of the least addictive substances out there. You guys all know Kevin Sabet, who, was been one of the longest, prohibitionists. And, we went to one of his talks out in Toledo when we were doing the Ohio Rights Group, tour of the state of Ohio. And he saw us sitting there. And after his talk, I mean, he ran like a rabbit because he knew we were going to be asking him, peppering him with questions that was going to shoot a bunch of holes into his speech, and he was not going to have it. So he was nothing but heels and a cloud of dust when he got done with his talk. So they don't have a leg to stand on. I've been involved in some of these televised debates and things like that. And every time we've been involved in it, we just destroy them when it comes to facts, and so they can get onto rhetoric and they can talk to a willing audience. But when it comes to trying to debate the facts, they don't have a leg to stand on.
Has that been your experience, Tim? Like when you go there, you have all this knowledge. Do you feel like it's just la 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 when you kind of talk to them? Are they listening? What is it like when you're in this state level and you and John are speaking with these folks and you're throwing facts at them, and for some reason it just seems to right?
Yeah. John's right on topic. I think it boils down to educational awareness is key. And working with the Ohio Rights Group there, and when we were creating House Bill 523, the medical program, I think we've seen a lot of that. Of the 133 legislators, I was in 129 offices within 2 months, trying to get them, to help create this medical program. Of course, I did run into a couple that, they wanted to say, people are dying from this. FBI stats didn't show that, so they couldn't prove it. I think, Dustin touched on a big thing about misinformation. And what it comes down to, and John kind of touched on it, is that they're fighting this battle that we continue to grow in knowledge, where they don't have their rebuttal has just been debunked so many times. There's nothing there for them. And as far as what, Dustin talks about his kids coming in, it's because, we started with one state, but now we've got 40 states with medical. We may be the 24th. So the message is out there. And, people are starting to hear about cannabis, both medical and adult choice, in the programs and the good things that they're doing and so forth. And, it's John hit on a very important thing. Law enforcement does have a drug seizure asset fund. I call it their secondary budget, which actually it is. They can really obtain a lot of money, millions of dollars in drug seizures. And that money can be spent on equipment, education, clothing, and so forth, as long as it's within the guidelines. But so it's kind of an incentive. So when we went out and worked at the task forces, we never went out looking for the drug, with the exception of we found the drug. Now, how much money can we find with it? Then we were really after the money, not so much the drug. So, a lot of good points that were made right there as far as, trying to get people. I know I'll just make this one point here. A lot of my testimonies at the State House, I brought up to legislators that there are some highly scholared individuals on this committee, but for some reason they continue to keep dumbing themselves down for a purpose. and that's to continue prohibition. But you can't take something that was back in the 20s and 30s, and by now we've already proven all that stuff is false. We have new sciences, we have new research, et cetera, that we have. So we have to start believing this stuff, and we have to start, relying on that. And that's a part of our daily lives now. It's what it is. Times have changed, so they're going to have to upgrade their knowledge. It's there.
You got to upgrade the knowledge. Hey, well, speaking of upgrading the knowledge, I want to bring in our next speaker here, Gabrielle Dean from MedicateOH.com, MedicateOH.com, MedicateOH on your social media. Gabrielle, you have been tooting the horn, blowing the bong. I don't know what we call it in the business here when it comes to cannabis news and information, but Medicate OH.
Don't blow in your bong.
Yeah, don't blow
No,
the
we can't
bong.
call it a bong, BC. Remember, we're not.
I don't
we're not
abide
there
by
yet.
anyone's rules, regardless.
I owned a
of
head
who
shop,
says
and
you're
we-
not. Yeah, we're talking to two lawless fellows. We're lawless as far
You
as
know
like
what?
most
The only
law-abiding
ones who
citizens.
said bong in my shop were cops.
Like
Period.
bing bong, the bell.
Yeah.
That's why it's confusing, Gabrielle Dean from Medicaid OH. It's confusing because the rules and the regulations and the language, it becomes a bit much sometimes. Welcome to the live stream, Gabrielle. Why don't you give yourself a quick introduction and let's talk a little issue 2.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Gabrielle Dion. I am the founder and publisher of MedicateOhio.com. We have been publishing information, education, stories about the medical marijuana program and about the advancement toward tomorrow since 2019 on our site. And yeah, it's the big day, right?
You bet.
So
No, it absolutely is. Go ahead. I was trying to
No,
type. I was trying to type at the same time as talking. There's a lot happening right now on here. I'll tell you what I want to do. Yeah, it's a lot of folks going on here. We're just having fun. We're talking issue 2. Tim, I'm going to say goodbye to you for a minute. We'll bring Tim back in just a little bit. Tim, hang on. Tim Johnson's going to come back and join us in just a little bit. We're going to bring that back just to kind of keep us focused here. I do want to, while you're here, Gabrielle, and we have you here as well, John, I want to continue our conversation walking through some of what is in issue 2. If you missed the beginning of the show, you can go back and watch it. We're going to keep slowly kind of walking through this slideshow that we have here to kind of cover some of this information. John and Gabrielle, kind of get your thoughts on that as well. So here's what we're looking with issue 2. Here's a big one. We actually had some comments in here. If you can, start where I'm at. Home grow seems to be something that everyone is talking about. Gabrielle, John, what is up with home grow? I hear people say that word. I know there's a lot of rules and regulations to happen, a lot of, harumphing that has to go, but everyone seems to be like, is tomorrow, like if it's yes, can we start planting seeds on Wednesday? What's happening here?
I'll go first if you'd
Sure.
like, John. It's good to see you, John. Yeah, as we point out in our articles on MedicateOH.com today, we were very careful in our language about telling folks that although the language of the law says that it'll be effective 30 days from now, I wouldn't start buying your home grow equipment just yet. I would expect, as Tim alluded to earlier, that there will be more regulations to come, especially by this Division of Marijuana Control, which takes over in January, regardless of the outcome of the election. So a lot to potentially happen there in terms of in terms of further rules and regulations and involving home grow. But yeah, absolutely, it would be amazing if it goes through as planned. It would allow for adults to and adults, and we're careful about this too, adults who own their own homes or who have permission. That's key because you don't want to do this in your rental unit and have the maintenance guy come in and find it. So, adults who own their own homes and can securely lock a facility where they can grow up to 6 plants, up to 12 if there's 2 adults in that household. Yeah, so that reasonably, if it goes through as proposed, then yeah, starting December-ish, yeah, you might consider getting your own home grow equipment or getting out the old equipment that you maybe used to have from another state.
just really telling everyone that you had the equipment actually, and just kind of removing some of the carbon filters so your neighbors know I had it the whole time, but now I can actually let it out. Where are you at, John, when it comes to this? I know you've been through this process. We've seen some of the regulations. You've met Mike DeWine, who has put it out there that he may, do a South Dakota and may rethink about this. We see the rules. Everyone gets excited. I feel confident, though, right? I feel confident that we should still maintain that, even though some tweaks and changes and difficulties are probably ahead.
Do you?
My biggest concern is that they're either going to eliminate it altogether, down at the legislature, or restrict it in such a way that it's going to be really problematic. I'm such a huge proponent of allowing people to grow their own medicine, just like they grow their own vegetables and things of that nature. Again, it comes back to, freedom and independence, because there's a lot of folks who want to avail themselves of cannabis who really, can't afford, a steady supply, because it is, can be somewhat, cost prohibitive, and being able to grow your own would give them that kind of freedom. And the one thing I never thought about until I talked to some folks who are involved in cultivation is just how therapeutic the act of cultivation is. To be able to take a seed or take a clone and develop it from nothing into this beautiful aromatic plant with all these amazing colors and the different types of and the things that you learn about different cultivars within the cannabis family, and all that comes with cultivation is so therapeutic for people who have a lot of anxiety or PTSD and stress disorders. Having that capability, there's just a quietness and just a satisfaction of being able to grow that, and to take that away from veterans, and take that away from people who have MS or PTSD or things of that nature. To me, it would be criminal. So I hope and pray that the state doesn't take that away. Again, if they're the folks that are talking about freedom and independence, nothing could be more fundamentally American than being able to grow your own medicine.
How big of an issue is this portion, really? I mean, what is the projected expectation of the percentage of people who are actually going to grow their own medicine in the state of Ohio? I appreciate the language being in there, but I also don't see Michigan have 85% of its users growing their own cannabis. I think that it's a very small sect of an already small sect of people who want to spend that much time and energy into doing that. I'm a patient. I've been a patient for a very long time. And I still don't know if I necessarily have the urge to say, heck yeah, now that I can grow, let's do it. I'm going to spend all this time and energy to grow some shit that probably isn't going to be very good for the next 2.5 years until I figure my things out. And I think that in turn, it's not this cost prohibitive thing. It's not this. I don't always see the cost benefits. I think with any hobby and anything you do, you're going to take it, to take it to the extreme, or to do it still costs money, and it costs time, and it costs energy, and it costs researching it. And I always wonder how big of a percentage this is really that important to.
Well, one thing I have learned in my years of activism, again, I've met a lot of folks and all across the spectrum, and cultivating cannabis is difficult. It's not like growing lettuce. It's not like growing tomatoes. There's so much. I mean, the temperature, the humidity, the nutrients, the light cycles all have to be really well balanced. And in any error or mistake, your plants can become hermaphrodite, or you can end up growing mold and things of that nature. So one thing I think would be you're going to see, if we do allow this, is you're going to have folks who are going to be consulting. You'll have people who will be able to go, someone who wants to do home grow who maybe hasn't had any experience with it, like the folks at the Cleveland School and other places can be able to advise and consult people who want to start doing a home grow but haven't done it before, because it will be it's an educational journey. And so I think you're going to see ancillary businesses that are going to pop up as a result that aren't really taken into account when you talk about, legalizing adult use here in Ohio.
Is there an absence of language for something like a caregiver? Caregivers growing stuff for other patients? Is there?
There is.
And that to me is that secondary auxiliary
Yeah,
business.
absolutely. That's something that yeah, absolutely. That's something that is not in the language, that there's not a caregiver program. And that may be one thing that is important to people in terms of home grow.
It's going to be interesting to see, I think as Tim talked about in the beginning, I think we're on a little bit lag with Gabrielle there, but as Tim talked about in the beginning, there's going to be, a lot of finagling, a lot of rules that are going to come out of it. And I think, according to some surveys, probably less than 10% of actual, cannabis is home grow. It's like the brew your own beer market. That is hard to do. It's hard to do. So no one's really like wasting 6 months to have a couple ounces when it's so convenient and so out there in those things. We're talking with Gabrielle Dion from MedicaidOH.com. We got John Pardee from the Ohio Rights Group, from Natural Therapies Education Foundation into there. Want to bring on another guest here. We're going to say goodbye to John in a little bit. One of the other businesses folks can do on top of those things, they can write some books here. You talked about the school, John. Well, we got Kevin W. Roach. Kevin W. Roach is currently an instructor at the Cleveland School of Cannabis. Also now, Kevin, you went and wrote yourself your first little book. Why don't you tell us about the book you wrote, Kevin? Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Kevin Roach, and Kevin W. Roach. I guess I got to have a pro name now. Nom de plume. Anyway, the book I wrote is actually a lot about the, I call it the outlaw science of underground cannabis growing. People who are doing home grow, both in private gardens and for-profit gardens, especially in the Appalachian region. It's called the Spring Creek Shake. It's a celebration of rural America and the war on drugs and how that affected each other in like a post-war on drugs perspective. But to speak to your point, it should be like any other vegetable. It should be like any other herb. You can grow oregano in your yard. You should be able to grow cannabis in your yard as well. A big portion of what I write about, and I know that a small portion of people do want to home grow now, but in rural communities with low access, it is imperative that these people still get medication. People who cannot afford medication but do have a little bit of land. Rural folks have definitely been growing their own cannabis for a very long time. And I feel like they're going to continue to do so, and they should have that liberty too. We talk about this legacy market with that term legacy as if something that's outdated, something that's extinct. It's just still there. And the way that we all acquired cannabis, I think everybody in this classroom, was at one point or another in the rather recent history through informal means. Okay. And so there is something there. Is everybody that you used a craft beer analogy earlier? I've certainly drank my fair share of beers. I don't think I've brewed one yet. And so, yes, there is a market for people who are going to be into doing this activity, this craft activity, as well as people who are just going to be regular consumers. Listen, I've eaten a lot of spaghetti. I've only grown like 5 tomatoes, though, right? But I still want to grow the tomatoes.
I want to switch your diet up, Kevin. That's a lot of beer and spaghetti that you're
but you brought
right
up
now.
a really good point about low access. There still are a lot of counties within the state that it does take 40-minute drive to get access to their medicine. And I could definitely see the benefits in those communities. But it also still seems like there's going to be an illicit market. Not everybody in that low income, low access area they're still calling up somebody else. Yeah, I feel totally.
And one of the problems is with prohibitions is try and stop them, right? They're already doing it. They're already going to do it. And it's up to you to stop them. And then it's just this impossible Sisyphean task unless you want to micromanage every single citizen. And in small communities, I can name 5 right off the top of my head, right where I grew up, that don't have a formal police force. Okay. So if there's not money for children's books, my God, there's no money for us to have an eye in the sky on everybody that's growing marijuana, which, by the way, more people than you'd think. And so I think it comes to us to allow for home grow, because it's going to be a part of Ohio culture, Midwest culture, no matter what we do. And so instead of we should allow for that space for it, because how many of these legacy cultivars have come to the greater market through just Ohio bag seeds? Maybe that's selling it short, but I mean like Lemon G and all these other Cleveland strains and the Fire from the Midwest, and all of this stuff is indicative of our greater cannabis culture, right? Now we're becoming something else. It's not just that cannabis is gonna get legalized, and hey, by the way, go and vote. Don't rest on your laurels. Go do it. It is now you don't have to travel to Colorado to get weed. So how do we make this special? Well, with anything else, we go back to what was special in the first place, what we did when nobody was looking, and that's how we forged our own kind of cannabis culture here. And that's the celebration of home grow. It's allowing people to have that civilian access. It's important when we talk about cannabis culture. This is the things that we need to allow, even though, we want to steamroll this with corporate interest. If we don't allow for it, it will exist anyway, despite itself. Because, listen, we fought a whole war on drugs and the drugs won, and that didn't stop us then.
Well, that is true, and to a point. Hey, I want to talk about something, Gabrielle Dion, MedicateOH.com on here as well, with Kevin W. Roach on there, author of the Spring Creek Shake, to search for the secret Appalachian cannabis. You can find a link to that in the comments right now for that. One of the other things as we continue our slideshow here, and we're going to bring in some more guests on our live stream in just a few moments. One of the other things on there is kind of the social equity piece, Gabrielle, and I know that this gets written a lot into it and is everything, right? Here's a big overview if you're just joining us now. Issue 2 is voting for the bones in the structure of what we're looking to do for adult use cannabis. All the fine details, all the minutia, all the little points, those are the things that are probably going to be harumphed and argued about for a while. What we're trying to do, what Tim Johnson has done and talked about at the beginning of the show, and John Pardee as well, is trying to lay out and vote for the approval of the structure, right? The frame of the house, some foundation. And then we'll go in and we'll build it. And one of the things that comes up often, Gabrielle, is the putting the social equity pieces in, but as we just found out recently with Nikki Lawley and some other folks, it's not always easy to do that. States like New York and other states have said, hey, we'll be super social equity partners and folks, and then we're still fighting lawsuits and things like that. So when people have those kind of misconceptions, we see these rules that you have on screen here that the program is going to try to be, and I'll fast forward the slide here for a minute, Gabrielle, to comment on both this one and the next one here. It's going to try to help protect some social equity aspects and then also keep some information confidential and private. Once again, big overviews. We don't have all those details, but when you see those pieces, Gabrielle, what are you thinking about the future of adult use with its social equity promise and with its protection of users, right? Because I think that's the other big aspect of it.
Yeah, this measure goes really far to award licenses before the general the general pool gets them. Social equity applicants will get first dibs, supposedly, in the proposed law, and that will include things like people who have prior cannabis offenses, people who have been disadvantaged based on race, based on gender, based on disability. So we hope to see those things come to fruition next year, and let some smaller people come into the game. And this also speaks to your next point about confidentiality, that we knew because we could see on all of the applications that the people who applied were mostly multi-state operators that had lots and lots of cash and lots of money. Well, let's let some little guys get involved, and some little businesses and some mom and pops who want to to get in and participate meaningfully. This is not happening currently. We don't have a lot of small businesses, and this is going to be a way to not only bring small businesses into the program with preferential status over other applicants, but it will also allow those applicants to apply confidentially so that they don't have to tell everybody all their business out there on their applications, which is important. But it also makes it harder because journalists have to do things like FOIA requests and things like that and dig a little bit more. But yeah, it's a very interesting piece of the measure, and I'll certainly be watching and reporting about how that gets implemented.
It's going to be interesting. Sorry, go ahead, Dustin.
I guess I want to talk about, everybody talks about job creation, and there's a part of me that says that this is bullshit. I hate to describe things in this way, but it's this notion of, look at all these jobs that are going to be created. But when I look around at dispensaries and cultivators, there are low paying jobs at the max, $14, $13. We're going to talk about offering jobs to these disenfranchised folks, but at the same point, you need $25 or $35 an hour to have a 1-bedroom apartment and a car and insurance and food at the most basics. And yet we're going to say, look at all these jobs that are created from our amazing industry.
Yeah.
It just seems ridiculous to me. So what is there ever any type of verbiage in these laws that change some of that kind of see that in order to help these people grow economically, we need to offer them competitive wages to other industries or other things?
I mean, unironically, we're facing down a labor crisis that is going to be resolved through some sort of collective bargaining. We've already seen it show up in other states. I know that there is currently a need for people hiring labor resources. People are unionizing and the labor market is changing. We're talking about all these jobs being added. Well, the people that are in those jobs are going to be the ones putting upward pressure. It cannot be like an authoritarian exchange of only downward exertion for so long before there's a pushback. And I think that we see a culture of America and the labor movement within America now waking up to where we are today and moving against it. And I think that would be the response. Solidarity forever. That's what I say. So
I'll tell you what, there are a couple people here in the chat. We got a couple other folks in here. I know that, no, that's all right. I know that Tim Johnson's been down there. He's been making some comments on this, and actually like Lenny Berry. Let's bring in Lenny Berry from the Ohio Cannabis Health and Business Summit. 6 people on screen, chaos right now. Lenny and Berry were literally commenting and talking in the chat. And I'm like, well, that's not the point, folks. Let's bring you up here. So Tim, do you want to talk about what you mentioned in the chat in regards to kind of how the Ohio Supreme Court ruled against some social equity movements? And then Lenny will go into some of those questions from there.
Yeah, I'll be real quick. 523, what we did was we put a 15% clause in there for to try to meet social equity. And that was for race, ethnicity, and gender. Of course, we did get the 15% actually higher margin reached for that goal, but the Supreme Court was challenged. Some license holders challenged it, and Supreme Court ruled, as it says in the Constitution, you can't use social equity based on race, ethnicity, and gender. So we got to be creative and come up with different ways of language, such as those impacted by the war on drugs. I think Dustin or Kevin may have mentioned that, the war on drugs, as far as your impact if you've had run in with the courts and so forth over it, or social impact, impacted neighborhoods. So there are other ways to go around it. We just can't use those terms. I don't think we're going to win if we try to.
That's interesting. Welcome to the show, by the way, Lenny Berry, founder of the Ohio Cannabis Health and Business Summit. We just had a conversation with Lenny a few weeks ago on the Because Cannabis podcast. Brand new episodes every single Wednesday on this YouTube, every Thursday on Spotify with video, and anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And so, Lenny, you had talked about in chat, one of those things that happens when adult use, we see it in Michigan, where it's a big part of New York. What they were trying to do is like help folks get those social equity licensing. Is that kind of what you were inquiring about?
Yes. I mean, in my opinion, it doesn't matter if you don't have the funds to get into the game, application fees, money to run the business. I mean, great. I win a license, then what? I lose it, right? Or I have to sell it to somebody. I mean, without the education, one, we don't have a chance there. And financially, you can forget about it. So if they're not going to set aside money to help the applicants for social equity, it's a waste of time, in my opinion.
Well, with
Lenny's
that, let me
actually
do this.
touching on a point. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I want to bring up a slide that talks about that. While you talk, Tim.
Yeah, I was just going to support what Lenny's saying. It's a very important point or part here of issue 2, and there is a section of language in there that addresses helping those economically impacted, as I've always called it, not being financially stable enough. They're going to set funds aside to try to help those people. As Lenny said, you can get a license fairly easy, but do you have $1.5 or $2 million for a dispensary, or do you have $5 million or $10 million for cultivation? And even if they give you half of that, $5 million, do you got the $2.5 million of your own money to put into it? So I think a lot of that is kind of misleading in the initiative, but hopefully, we'll be able to address that and figure it out and be able to get people of lesser incomes into the market and part of this industry.
And if we're looking at screen here, just to kind of recap what we're talking about. So Ohio is going to have a 10% tax. By the way, pretty low comparatively. It's kind of in line with Michigan. How you guys feeling about the 10% tax? Too high, too low?
I mean, it's lower than a lot of
I
other
don't like
states.
tax at all. I have a strong opinion against the tax. The reason I do is I think for 80 some years, the cannabis community has been punished criminally. They've taken property from us. They've taken our monies. They've taken our children. They've stopped taking our jobs. They've taken our drivers. We've been punished for 80 some years. And now what they're going to do is they're going to turn around and say, rather than incarcerate them, we're just going to go ahead and take their monies from them by letting them purchase the product. And we're going to throw this, 10% on top of the additional 8 to 10%, depending on where you live, for local taxes. So Ohio could start out, 18 to 20%. And if federal gets their way, as Schumer said, he would like to throw about a 15 or 20% on top of that. So sooner or later, we could be looking at going to a dispensary to buy $100 bag of weed, and $50 of it is taxes.
Right.
Well, it is it's the game you play to get into it. Good, bad. I mean, I know a lot of people aren't happy, but to Lenny's point, it is one of the lower tax rates across the country. We're closer in line with Michigan. And you can see on screen here, Lenny, and we'll see some of the early estimates are somewhere in Ohio's first year. And it's an impossible thing to gauge. They just throw out numbers between 200 and 400 million. I don't know what that means. But they're going to take that percentage. They're going to create this thing called the Adult Use Tax Fund. Once again, this is the structure. Who knows what happens years from now, but they're going to create the Adult Use Tax Fund. And then you can see the splits on screen there, that they're going to try to split up that money. So give about 36% to social equity, give about 36% to these cannabis facilities funds, give about 25% to substance abuse and addiction funds. And then 3%, I guess, goes to kind of help fund the DCC, the Division of Cannabis Control, the Tax Commission Fund. So that's kind of the percentage breakout that Ohio's kind of mimicking what they're rolling out on day one, I guess, with issue 2 passing tomorrow. So they're going to try and put some money into it. But what I'd like to see, Lenny, and be honest with you, and I would love to see Ohio, and I don't know if we're that forward thinking yet, but I'd love to see them come to a place where they get like Massachusetts, they get like California or even Michigan, and start those medical, what are those miniature licenses, those micro marijuana licenses, which allow a lot of people to do a lot of things in their own space. It really helps people on the social equity front. Like that would be a really amazing aspect if we could bring more of that into this industry, especially those micro marijuana licenses. If you're not familiar with them listening now, those are fantastic in those states and what they've done for smaller scale entrepreneurs, especially disenfranchised.
Are they doing good? I mean, honestly, I love the idea of the micro license, but has there been a successful owner of one who isn't complaining about how hard it is to operate and succeed profitably in that in that convention. I mean, Michigan, I don't know if there's one micro business license owner who hasn't fought for massive changes to how things are structured, just because it's next to impossible to compete in any way.
Right. I agree. I mean, it's the same scenario, like you said. You're getting a license, but you still have to compete against MSO, right? For pricing, for shelf space, for everything else. So, you know, you can get the license, but how long, to your point, Dustin, will you be in business? You know, so unless you change the tiering of, let's say, the taxation for the smaller grows or those micro licenses, do they still get taxed the same way that the big MSOs do? So I mean, a lot of it could be there to help the smaller, you know, business or those home grow people, whatever, you know, those craft growers, if you will. But I haven't seen any of that type of language either.
Yeah, it's actually BC. I lost my train of thought.
You guys are all like, here's what I'm trying to do. I know, look, here's the real deal, right? And here's what everyone gets into. And I understand, right? I understand everyone gets all mad and everyone gets all frustrated and everyone says, but I don't like this byline and this bullet point annoys me in subsection 16 to subsection 17 is complete and total bullshit. I get it. People, we get it. But here's the deal. You either are going to get adult use with all the problems or you're not going to get it. So I'm going to take an imperfect system because I feel like, and this is where I sit, and I know that some of you, and I get it, and I understand that there is frustrations and it's not a perfect system. But in order to push forward to the next level, I got to take the baby step, right? I have to get this to get those other things into effect. Is the system perfect? No. Will it always be something that pisses someone off in the industry? Yes. Is there someone on Reddit right now complaining about what is happening in the world of cannabis? Of course there is, man. Welcome to 2023. But what we are trying to do, you got to vote yes to make that first step progress, right? You have to vote yes to make the first step move forward. Without this, it's just more of this and us complaining about it. So I'm team vote yes because it's going to initiate a change. Some change, right? You got to put something into action at some point. That's what I'm going. Bunch of negative Nellies in this room. That's what I learned. Here, you know what?
No. Not being negative at all. Not being negative at all. We're just having an educated conversation.
I just keep thinking about my boys that just let me know that dispensaries are now slotting their cases, and it's shelves to the highest bidder.
And some big business retail.
I can't imagine. I just can't imagine the small guy succeeding against the slotting culture, and auctioning for brand visual space in a dispensary. I want to make sure that the language that we have open for innovation that allows for real change, long-term sustainable change, not short-term wins that are just like make you go home and want to hug your wife for the night. I want to hug my wife for life.
I get it. Now, listen, the nature of existence is suffering, right? There is going to be something that we are not going to like, no matter what we are doing. We can be miserable in paradise. We do have to allow for these types of things to progress and to bloom and to blossom, right? I'm all about having this small culture that is also going to be part of our main culture, right? In order to get cannabis legalized, we had to do this little dance with the devil, right? We had to make this compromise. And there's no way to, once you dance with the devil, right, there you go. Like, we had to take this cut in taxes, and we had to do that. And that's the real politic of the situation. We can be idealists all we want, but we do, if we're trying to make things happy, then we have to work on the other way and sacrifice a bit of what we want to get what is good. Now, am I happy about that? No, of course not. This is the political discourse where there's a constant push of the people going up against trying to change these imperfect systems. But to BC's point, it is better to begin imperfectly than to not begin at all and wait for a perfect thing to come along.
Like, we got Daniel talking on the show right now, talking. And I know him personally, and I know he uprooted his entire life because of the small wins that Michigan had. Went to Michigan, is a breeder up there. It worked on much larger things. And after 8 years is saying, damn, I wish this was structured differently, and that my dream, the dream I've worked so hard for, the thing that I've uprooted my whole family for, that I have sacrificed everything that I've done in the past to move forward in this direction, to have something 5 years later or 7 years later not work out in a certain way because the language is weak or because we took small steps is heartbreaking. People are sacrificing their livelihoods to initiate businesses in this industry, and we're in some capacity handicapping them at the knee after 5 years.
And this reveals
you guys are on a really good topic right now. Go ahead, Kevin. No, I'm just gonna jump in real quick. Yeah, I just want to jump in real quick because BC, Kevin, Dustin, all of you making Lenny and Gab, y'all make a very good point about we have to start with baby steps. And I know creating a medical program, working with Senator Kenny Yuko and Senator Dave Burke, doing our tours around and the state, different colleges, getting some input and so forth, and then coming back into the State House. And the evening that the actual bill passed, the first thing Kenny Yuko looked at me and says, there you go, Timmy, you got your medical program. I said, we got a 1% medical program. I was being facetious. I was being sarcastic. And he goes, well, here's the importance. You're going to have to learn to take baby steps, Tim. So you're going to be down here a few more years fighting for the cause. So I've been down there 9 years fighting for the cause, and we've had baby steps. We've made improvements. We're not going to get everything we want in the beginning. And it's going to be the same with this adult program. But we're going to get one thing that we don't have now. We're going to get a card that legally protects us from the judicial system. And that's what we're after, is for them to leave us alone. We'll worry about the home cultivation. We'll worry about, the businesses and so forth, that evolve off of this and so forth. Baby steps, taking our time, and the way that every other state has done that. The one point I will make real quick is, I think Kevin touched on it. California, Colorado, Washington, Oregon. We had to sacrifice something. We had to prove a point about cannabis, and we proved that there were medicinal values. So that's what we're stuck with. This plant will never be fully decriminalized. We've already proven the medicinal values. We can't redact that and just say make it legal as tomatoes now. It's for everybody to do it. The values are there, so we're going to have to go with the medical values, but we can also have adult choice, just the same as we do, other issues in life when we turn 21 years old.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you what, I'm going to put a pause. We're going to put a pin. We're going to kind of keep shifting. We got some other guests lined up in the lobby. Gabrielle and Tim, I'm going to say goodbye to you for a minute. Feel free to stay. We'll bring you back up in a little bit as we kind of end this thing. Kevin, some people are asking, I'm going to put you down there too. We're asking about the hard copy of your book, The Spring Creek Shake. It's only Kindle right now. Is that correct? But the hard copy coming soon?
It's only Kindle for now, and then there's going to be a special edition coming out in December, which, hey, if I get a couple more buys, I'll be able to hire an editor, and so all the syntax and grammar will be all right too.
Buy it. Spring Creek Shake's available on Amazon right now.
Let Gabrielle read it. She owns a news website. It's very cool. You should go there too.
Probably should. All right, Kevin, I'm going to say goodbye to you for a few minutes. Hang in there. If we say goodbye to you for a while,
I some folks if you needed that.
There you go. Editor Gabriel Dion, Medicaid OH. We'll see you in a few minutes. Tim Johnson, I'm going to see you in a few minutes as well. I'll keep Lenny in here for a little bit. Where's Tim, man? We got to remove Tim from this lobby somehow. There he is. There's Tim. We're going to bring in, we got a couple guests first, but we're talking about jobs in the industry just a little bit ago. We had one Cleveland School of Cannabis instructor. Let's bring in the head cheese, technically my boss, but I don't roll like that in here, Tyrone. You're in my world now, Tyrone Russell. That's how I roll. President of the Cleveland School of Cannabis. I technically work for Tyrone, but I got a microphone now, so I'm in charge. This is what we're saying. We got Lenny Berry. We got Tyrone Russell. We're talking issue 2. Tyrone, known you for a long time. The Cleveland School of Cannabis was really one of the first ancillary businesses to take advantage of the burgeoning medical industry back in 2016 when I first met Austin Briggs, kind of the owner, founder of the school. Yourself and Kevin Green came along a little bit and really springboarded the school to what it is today. Brand new facility located in Independence, Ohio. Robust online program. The school is growing on site, processing on site, mock dispensing on site. Talk about the need, Tyrone. First of all, great to see you. Quick introduction, and then kind of the reason why the school existed, and then where you see its fit as we transition potentially into adult use with tomorrow's issue 2 vote, which everyone listening now is going to go vote yes for.
For sure. No, first of all, I definitely appreciate the conversation, right? Dustin hitting a lot of things on the head that keep me up at night, including the low pay that people walk into the industry with, right? Because we get that on the back end as an institution. Wait, I'm going to pay for education and then get paid $14 an hour, which they would consider the average pay in Ohio, but still not enough pay for somebody with a small family, right? One other person to get by in life. So I'm with you on that. I hear you on that. And I think it's part of a larger issue. My name is Tyrone Russell, president of Cleveland School of Cannabis, started in this role in 2019. Prior to that was actually helping the organization get off the ground from a marketing standpoint. My background is in education. I was in higher education for 16 years before working with the institution. But we exist because there are jobs, right? There are jobs, and fortunately and unfortunately, jobs don't require, right? These jobs don't require any sort of education to enter into the space. But what I will say is we exist to make sure people are equipped with good information when deciding to pursue a job in the industry, right? Because the worst thing you can do is get into a space thinking you're prepared and then be underprepared or not prepared at all. So our job is to make sure people are equipped with good information delivered by folks like you, BC, and folks like a number of other people who get into the game and make sure that Ohio has an educated market, regardless of what people want to do with the plant, right? So our goal and our job is to make sure we have a hub to educate people and hopefully put them in a position to pursue the industry however they wish to pursue it, be it a patient, be it someone who's using it, as they say, recreationally, if you will, right? But we want to equip people with the proper information to engage in the plant from their perspective. So in the future, we just hope to continue to grow the pot and make sure people grow the pot, right? Getting people what they deserve and what they need to enter into this space. That is the goal, and it always has been the goal since Austin Briggs first talked to me on an airplane in the Dominican Republic.
It's pretty interesting as we go forward. I know this day, I've talked with you about this day, this kind of potential adult use, it's going to bring, as we talk about, it's going to bring more businesses, whether they're MSOs or whether they're local mom and pops. Either way, it's going to need more human beings to kind of be in that place. And the one thing that the school has really worked hard on, I think, is trying to ensure that those folks have not only like cannabis knowledge, but to be honest with you, Tyrone, in my experience, and Dustin, who's worked a lot with the school with me, a lot of folks come in there with strong cannabis knowledge. Sometimes it's the soft skills. Sometimes it's the what you don't know that really, I think, matters, that I feel like is the skill sets the school sometimes imparts. It's networking, it's teamwork, it's how to work together in a unit outside of all that.
Right. So you think about it, we could have, back in 2017, Austin called, we could have said, let's just go online. Right. We were being encouraged to just eat up market share as a school. Don't worry about it. Just make a lot of money and eat up market share. But part of the design of the organization is to help people build those connections with people. Right. It's to help them get into a side of a room with folks who have been told you are the outcast, you are wrong, you're a drug head, you are this, you are that, and put them in a room and say, no. There are people like you and who will love you and care for you the way you deserve to be loved and cared for within Ohio, inside the same space, willing to learn and teach in the same place, right? So an element of this, as you said, is the people aspect that oftentimes gets overlooked, and the connection that people have around this plant. So I believe the school has saved a tremendous amount of lives and relationships simply by putting two people from the opposite ends of whatever spectrum you design into a room and saying, you have more in common than this world is going to lead you to believe. Let's have some conversation. So I think the people aspect of it is severely overlooked, even in our art of teaching, right? And the work that Nicole and the team have done in creating curriculum, even in the art of that, I think something at play that's a lot larger than anything you can learn in the book is how people are beginning to interact and grow with one another on a real human level. So I think that's severely overlooked, but I think it is the most important part of what the school brings to the Ohio market.
Damn, mic drop.
Just let it into there. It's going to be exciting though, Tyrone. I think it's going to be exciting. We put the link in the comments below. Right now rolling out stuff like growing on site. Can we just I'm going to put something out. I don't often get this public microphone to say this on behalf of the school, but every single time the school posts some of their, less than 0.3% Delta-9 THC that they are growing, their legal hemp, someone inevitably rolls up in the comments, maybe you right now, like, bro, what is that dank, or what is that terrible brown frown you guys are growing? Where's all the terp? I'm like, first of all, here at the school, you get the opportunity to mess up, right? Like, we don't always grow perfect product at the school. And I think that's the point that often gets lost sometimes, right, Dustin, is that ability, like, you've been in business for a long time, like the ability to make mistakes on someone else's plant, man. Like, you don't want to screw up 6 months worth of work, screw up theirs, right? Screw up their work.
Kill their plans. Yeah. I mean, that hands-on experience is tremendous. And you do get that in the comments. And I had to, like, as the president of the institution, and I know I don't feel it half as much as the folks who are in the soil every day. But it hurts when people fail to realize the learning process and what it takes for people to get from point A to point B, because those experts come out and they begin to scream that stuff. Oh my gosh, why are they doing it like this? Why are they doing? And I'm thinking, these folks are stepping into the industry and learning, right? They're not going to be perfect. Their cake isn't going to be fully baked the first time they put it in, or it might be over baked, but they're learning the process. And for me, that's the beauty of it. Folks have the opportunity to make a mistake, right? And learn from that mistake and make a mistake with a bunch of other people in the room and guidance. So it's a tremendous opportunity for
much like cake, I'll take some bad cannabis.
There you go.
I'm legit, right? Like, I click cake, undercooked cake, overcooked cake. I'm going to eat that cake. So like, I'm just going to eat it. Like, I'm okay. It's still cake at the end of the day. And you know that. Everyone listening right now too, you know it too. You're going to consume the bad cannabis.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Sure.
It's
what I will say, BC, and this is to anyone listening, the cannabis industry isn't separate from American politics. It isn't separate from American design. It isn't separate from the hierarchy that exists in this country. So when you start thinking about cannabis and people telling us to take baby steps and hopefully creating something that unfortunately we don't get to enjoy in years from now, we got to realize that that's how this country is designed, and that's what we're up against. So when we're looking at low pay, or we're looking at the hoops we got to jump through to get banking, or we're looking at, as an institution, regardless of what the law says, the people's politics who step in and say, I know the law says we're supposed to fund you this way, but we're not because we don't feel like it. Like, that's American. That's how it's structured. No, the institution writes one thing, and then the people who are in charge of enforcing the institution, they do something totally different based on what they want to do. And that's what we're up against. So as much as we sit with a pen and pad to write down the most structured design of a new issue and say, this is what it's going to be, when we hand it over to the folks who have control of it, they'll tell us what they're going to accept and what they aren't, and they'll enforce it the way they want. And that's the frustrating part, Dustin, is that no matter how much we write, how direct we are, the folks that get to control how they distribute it and how they treat us get to do what they want with it. And that's the scary part, man.
I got to feel like there's someone in our lobby right now who I feel has an opinion on this very subject. Let's bring in Andrew D'Angelo, AndrewD'Angelo.com. One of the reasons we're all probably here today, consuming some legal cannabis. Andrew and his brother Steve, obviously one of the OGs of cannabis pioneers and entrepreneurship. Harborside, Last Prisoner Project, all that good stuff. I could see your eyes kind of sitting there, Andrew, as Tyrone's going and passionate there. And you are someone, Andrew, who has seen that shift. You've seen the shift not only in when you sat in the early days of Harborside and not being allowed to do anything in the first CBD instances, and those to state after state, and the pros and the cons. Ohio's we're all excited here, but it's not always an easy road, right?
No, it's not an easy road, and it's just the first step along the road. And as Tyrone was saying, improvements are going to be inevitable in the framework, especially should we win tomorrow. Okay?
Should we? Is like, we're not even saying should. We will. Win. Put it
out. We're very close to the polls opening, and things are I'm looking really good right now from what I've been observing from California. Just as I predicted at the conference, the politicians came out against it. The governor came out against it. A bunch of community groups, pastors, so forth. Oftentimes when we see those well-known leaders take a stance against, we see the polls tighten.
Mhm.
I'm not sure you've seen that in Ohio since that went down or not, but generally we want to be 5 points or more in the polls as a comfortable lead. As we get closer to people pulling the lever, and sometimes things tighten up. So we want to be vigilant. Everybody out there, grab your family members, grab your church members, grab your students, grab your teachers, grab anybody who's old enough to vote, anyone who's registered to vote, and get them to the polls tomorrow. But yes, here in California it was almost the opposite. We had a very liberal medical framework that was not very strict at all, that was put on the ballot by activists collecting signatures. Not too different than what you've done in Ohio. But here in California, the legislature doesn't get to F with the statute that voters pass in the same way that can be done in other places like Ohio. And so then when adult use came around, the framework went from a very laissez-faire, decentralized, low barrier to entry framework where basically all you had to do was form a collective of patients. You didn't even have to register with the state. You didn't even have to have a card with the state. You just had to have a doctor recommendation and a document that formed a collective. Then you could bake a brownie in your kitchen and bring it to Harborside and sell it. Can't do that in Ohio under the medical program. Can't do that in most places, right? Mm-hmm. So California was weird. It was a little bit of an outlier. Now, once the adult use framework came around, some 25 years, almost 22 years later, everybody, the politicians and elected officials, had wisen up on the dangers of letting a laissez-faire system take hold, and the framework was really bad. And so similar to Ohio, we're faced with a choice of, do we vote yes for a framework that may not be perfect so that we can get people out of prison and stop sending people to prison, and then fix the framework after we eliminate that threat over time? And, we figured with a Democratic super majority in California, it wouldn't be too hard for us to fix it. Well, it's proven impossible for us to fix it. And 5 years after the framework started, it isn't any closer to being fixed than it was 5 years ago, really. So we still have 60% of the municipalities in California that have banned cannabis licensing. We don't have access throughout most of the state. There's 7 cities in the state that have 80% of the licenses. And there's a lot of fixing that still needs to happen. So, and there will be fixing that needs to happen when, I'll use the word when, issue 2 wins tomorrow. And that work hopefully will be supported by academic institutions like the Cleveland School of Cannabis or Cincinnati University, quite a few, maybe even the Ohio State University. You have wonderful academic institutions that should be able to support further reforms. We're also obviously going to need activists and industry to support those reforms, not just academia. And, I think one of the things I admire about Ohio is that your elected officials, when the voters speak, especially if they speak strongly, tend to listen and hesitate to go against the will of the voters. Here in California, I don't care about the will of the voter, man. Well, we don't care about that. We're a one-party system. But in Ohio, elected officials really do, because you're kind of a purple state and you're not a blue state like California. You're not purely a red state. And so, that's good. We want that. We want elected officials to feel that way. So, part of how much is going to be fixed, will need to be fixed, will depend on how big we win tomorrow. And if we win really big, the legislature may be, certainly they're not going to repeal the law, but they may hesitate before they enact too many rules of the road that would, in effect, lower access or raise prices for consumers, thereby empowering underground markets and the dual market problem that I like to call it. So there's no doubt that this is inning number one, and should we put some points on the board tomorrow, there's the literally the day Wednesday, you'll have to, well, I don't know, you'll have to see what the legislature do. It might take them a little bit more than a day, but they're going to make their move. They're going to do their thing, and you'll just have to see what it looks and feels like. Usually elective bodies are really good at dividing communities between corporate interests, activist interests, patient interests, consumer interests, local interests, religious folks' interests, band camp. Don't forget about band camp. They're going to have their say too. And so, that's what's going to go down, and you just got to stay vigilant. We want a framework that hopefully will bring consumers and small businesses and folks that have been impacted, obviously, by the war on cannabis, into a job other than an entry-level job. Our people should be in management. Our people should be owning and operating. Our people should be, in senior management, in VP level, director level. These are the jobs that are gonna really make the graduates of the Cleveland School of Cannabis have really vibrant, amazing careers. Because once you get into that executive level, it's a lot easier to provide for your family. It's a lot easier to build up. You don't live paycheck to paycheck quite as extremely as you do without that. And it's an easier jump into owning and operating, because you learn these businesses at the highest level. You see what the boards you're working for or the CEO, you see the mistakes people make, and you start to go, well, gosh, I think I can do better than that. And
it is it's one of those things, and I wanted to get your thought on that, Tyrone, because it's one of those things that the school talks about, and we're talking the Cleveland School of Cannabis president, Tyrone Russell. We got Andrew D'Angelo here. You can learn more about him, andrewdangelo.com. You can go get this type of inside knowledge from Andrew. Episode 1 of Budding Minds with Andrew D'Angelo, now available on the Because Cannabis podcast. Episode 2 coming November 20th. But one of the points, Tyrone, that the school talks about often is that kind of upward mobility. I know we talked a little bit about those kind of entry-level jobs, but I think a part of that is that type of education, and the industry itself doesn't require you to go back and get a master's degree sometimes. Like, you have tremendous upward mobility starting sometimes in the base level job, right?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things, right? We when we first started working with Rise Dispensary, they brought us in. One of the first things they said is, like, your students don't require the additional 6 to 8 weeks of training when they get into our organization. And what that does, because it doesn't require that additional 6 to 8 weeks of training, is it puts them on a quicker track to become, those higher level folks. So when you look across the industry in Ohio, you'll see those CSC graduates who got into the game early and then get to brag about how they moved up quickly. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they didn't have to sit around and learn, this new material, because they had learned it already coming in. I always tell our students when they first enroll that you do not need to be here to get a job in the cannabis market. I like to be upfront. I like to be honest. I don't care if someone says, you know what, since I don't have to be here, I'm leaving. It's integrity, right? Entering into the space. But I follow up. But if you do, and you take this seriously, it becomes a leg up in the industry where people are kind of fighting, if you will, at the bottom to figure out who's going to bubble to the top. So there's some merit in getting into those spaces with, strapped with information and education, formal education, right? Because they can quantify that, for lack of better terms, when it comes to, someone saying, hey, I grew in my basement for 10 years. I'm ready to grow here. Folks want to be able to quantify it and measure it up against, different people. And they do that with CSC. So that entry level, while I think we can treat people a lot better with that entry level pricing in a brand new industry, I do think when you step in there, you can grow with the industry in a way that we haven't had the opportunity to grow in other spaces, right? So when people take that seriously, right, they can move throughout an industry that's growing. But when you're at the beginning of it, you really can't see how far it can grow, but you can feel it if you actually stay on task and on target with it, right? And Andrew, I appreciate listening to you last Friday in the Green Hour. Definitely a good conversation when you stepped in the building last week.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I mean, look, I owned and operated a pretty big cannabis company, and those that can deliver the goods will move up. Period. Every dispensary needs rock star, call them bud tenders if you want to call them bud tenders, right? A rock star bud tender, patients and adult use customers know by name. They seek them out. And that bud tender will be a sales manager pretty darn quick. That sales manager will be an assistant general manager pretty darn quick. And there'll be a general manager pretty darn quick, because the cream, there's just the industry, with the exception of the last year. All right. Just put the last year to the side, because we've experienced a lot of headwinds, but you have an industry that's growing, rapidly growing. You have a giant underground market that, if public policy is done correctly, should enable us to absorb that market. If we can do that, that is going to be enough growth to propel anybody with ambition and just the desire to apply themselves, opportunities to really, really move up. Because running a store, you don't need an MBA to run a store. You don't really need an MBA to be a VP of regional stores somewhere. Honestly, I know that most of the CEOs and the C-level people have MBAs and stuff, especially in the big companies and so forth. Do you really need that? No.
It's a good question.
Not. You do not. Okay. Because is it helpful? Sure. Can it sometimes get in your way because you're book smart, but not street smart? Yeah. Because the people, if you just look at the MJ Biz daily demographic data of the consumer of cannabis, over something like 70% of them have an associate degree or less. Okay, have an income of $50,000 a year or less. Do you think MBAs know how to talk to those people? They do not.
Yeah.
They do not typically. Now, a good one does, and ones that are really well trained, maybe at the Cleveland School of Cannabis do. All right, but we've all met them, right? We've all seen them completely out of touch with the heavy consumer or the patient consumer, right? And is just going about this as any other consumer packaged good. And it's not, okay? It's not any other consumer packaged good. So there's tremendous opportunity, I guess, is the point in saying all this. You do have to be ambitious. You got to show up for your job early, and you have to stay late, and you have to be the first one there and the last one to leave, and you have to love your job, and you have to love talking to strangers, and you have to love your team, and all those things. You got to have that. But if you do have those things, I can tell you, I could count them on two hands, and I hired and fired, I don't know, 1,000 people probably at Harborside. I could count them on this many hands. So and you know, maybe I'm in California, the work ethic's a little different.
It's all there. It's just something that's interesting.
it's
But I
just-
think it is a good reminder, Andrew. And we're talking with Andrew D'Angelo, AndrewD'Angelo.com. We're talking with Tyrone Russell, the president of the Cleveland School of Cannabis. And actually, I want to bring in one more person here. We're going to bring back all our guests in a few minutes. But something, Andrew, that I know we talked about a little bit during some of our past conversations with Andrew D'Angelo and the Because Cannabis podcast is what happens to the patient. And I think that's something that gets a little nervous and scary. So I want to bring in to the side, she's not even paying attention, Dr. Bridget Williams, MD, from Dr. Bridget Williams. We'll put her link there. One of the best cannabis recommending physicians in Ohio. Also a physician. And so Dr. Bridget Williams, first of all, welcome to the show. That's something I want to have you hear about and have you engage with Andrew a little bit, just kind of that piece, right? Like, you're someone who works with these patients. I feel like adult use is always something everyone gets so excited about, but we got to remember, we talked about the 10% sales tax and stuff a little bit ago. We got to remember the patient's part of it, right? And that's something that we don't want to lose and not consider as we transition to adult use. I'm going to say goodbye to Tyrone for a little bit, and then we'll bring you back a little bit, Tyrone.
Thank you.
So I definitely believe that with all that we've developed in the cannabis space, that the medical story is our strongest aspect of the cannabis industry. And so as we go into a recreational space or social space, and where so much of recreational use is actually still medical, we don't want to use the medical patient so that we can just build a more recreational program. The medical patient doesn't disappear in the course of this. And so in a strong program in every state, what we should do is make sure we still invest in the patient, make sure that we still have medical licenses and that we reward the people that maintain those, and that we still offer more medicinal products in the dispensaries. We don't want to use people and their illnesses just so that we can be able to do what we want to do. We need to be able to make sure that we support the people that actually allow this to happen.
Should we be offering different products to the medical versus adult use?
I don't know if it needs to be entirely separate, but traditionally, when we think about more social interaction, we do think about THC more than some of the other cannabinoids. But I feel that with my patients, as they understand cannabis more and more, they become interested in CBG. They want to know more about CBD, that they identify with the relaxation and ease that CBD offers. You know, I developed a mobile cannabis bar, and in the beginning I only offered THC options, but the people that were coming to our bar also wanted CBD mixed with their THC. They understood that the social interaction that you can have with cannabis doesn't have to be THC alone. So not only do we need to keep our medical patient engaged and offer things to them, but we need to make sure that our more social or recreational consumers don't miss out on the benefits that the whole plant can offer.
No, it's absolutely factual, right? It absolutely speaks to that. So with all that said, are you excited about tomorrow? Are you excited about the potential of adult use? Or are you like, and we're going to bring back all of our panels here in just a little bit. We'll bring back Tim, we'll bring back Kevin, we'll bring back who's ever still around. Gabrielle, I think, might be here. Are you excited, or are you more apprehensive with what potentially issue 2 could bring?
You know, at the end of the day, what I do is support patients. And at the end of the day, I support, honestly, the rights of just human beings. And the fact that we have really demonized a plant over decades of time is, I can't stand behind that, right? And I do believe that, you know, I grew up with grandparents that came from Tennessee. And if I was ill, I was getting cod liver oil, and I was getting, I don't even want to mention how I had bacon fat tied to my foot. I did.
Yeah.
And I believe that medicinally, we're moving into a space where people want to be able to control their own medicine. And they want to be able to take things that they feel good about and that they trust. And do I support someone being able to grow their own plants and make the tinctures and salves that are filled with love, as opposed to something they just buy in store shelves? Yeah, I do support that greatly. I do. So yeah, I'm anxious. Maybe, I don't know. Like I'm excited. Yeah, I guess anxiety is excitement. So.
Yes.
I'm excited to see what happens, and I can't grow a tomato plant, but with if this passes, you never know what I might be able to do. So
You do never know. Let's bring back Andrew D'Angelo real quick. Andrew, we lost you for a minute there. Welcome back. I wanted to ask you, while Dr. Bridget was talking, Andrew, as someone who you did it a long time medicinally, right? Like almost 20 years plus that had medicinal, which feels like a long time to have this established program. You've talked about how California already had some different kind of, leeway with it than Ohio's a little more strict. But what are some things? What are some highlights? What are some areas that we should think about as we transition to adult use? You've seen it. California is one of the biggest sales of adult use already, but you had 20 plus years. Ohio's only had a few. Now we're going into this thing really quickly. What are some pros? What are some cons? What are some things that we should think about as we transition? Hopefully transition.
Don't leave the patients behind. And I'm talking to every stakeholder in the ecosystem. Part of what happened in California was, as soon as adult use happened, everybody wanted to scale up and invested all this money into scale and brought in all these products that were partly designed by regulation, like 5 milligram, 10, the limits on the edible doses, certain products like transdermal patches and tinctures. They're niche markets in an adult use environment. In a patient environment, they're less niche and they're a little bit more dominant in terms of percentage of sales. But when, let's say, tinctures are 5% of all sales in a medical market, and that goes to 0.5% in an adult use market, then no one's incentivized to make tinctures. And so they go away. The patients come in. They're like, "Where's my tincture?" The poor dispensary's like, "We don't know," or they don't make it anymore. They don't have a good answer. Right? And so what dispensary owners and producers and everyone should start doing now, before all of that happens, how are we going to keep some of these products that are really important to patients on the shelf? How we're going to make sure they are as good or better moving forward? Okay. And how are we going to make patients feel like they are special? Right now, patients feel pretty special because they're the only ones in the program. And so, of course, when you're an only sibling and then your parents have a little baby and you're not the only one anymore, and you don't feel as special as you did before. So how can a parent address that, or how can a company address that? And one of the things, I'll just give a free nugget that's worth millions of dollars, but I'll give it because I love Ohio and I love all of you. Create a separate register, a separate area. Don't lose your patient consultation rooms. Make sure that your nurses, your doctors, the people you have relationships, even if they're arm's length relationships, that you're engaged with them and they're engaged with you, and that they're welcome to also engage with your patients. And just do whatever you can to make people feel special, and let them know this is going to be a big change. It's going to be a shock to you. If they learn that it's a shock on their own without any warning from ownership, then they get pissed off at ownership because they think it's your fault. It's not your fault the framework changed. It's not your fault the voters voted. Not your but people, because they don't feel special anymore, and there's all these people in the shops they don't recognize, and there's all these products they don't understand, and their high potency things not there anymore, and all of a sudden things are more expensive because you got this 10% tax. And why shouldn't I go back to the underground market in that scenario if my medicine's going to be 10% more expensive? Now, I don't know if you have an exemption in the framework for medical. We do in some places in California, not all places, but you pay a little bit lower taxes if you're medical. That helps a lot, okay, keep people in. But that is somewhat outside of our control. What's inside of our control is making people feel important and special and cared for and like they're valued. And that's 100% within our control. And it's just easy to get caught up in the hype, man. And it's easy to get caught up in the growth stories. And, you know, there's all these consultants telling people in Ohio, your business is going to triple overnight. It will not triple overnight. Maybe the first 3 days, there'll be lines around the door as people are like, wow, I can do this now. But 3 weeks in, not so much, right? And so we have to learn from what's happening in other places and try to be mindful of the patients. There's no, the patients, the whole thing was built on their backs, right? They were the first ones that were brave enough to go get their card, register with a government entity, go to Dr. Bridget, go through that whole process, and then risk their community members, their boss, their church members, other folks seeing them go into these places and judging them for it. And they had to deal with all of those things, and they still pioneered it. Why? Because when you're in cancer, you'll deal with that stuff to stay alive. Okay. If you're in intractable pain, you'll deal with that stuff to help with the pain. And people get very upset if they don't feel like that effort, that risk is not being respected in the new framework.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can say Dr. Bridget Williams also, by the way, we should mention, we put some link in the comments, helping curate Courage in Cannabis, Volume 1, in the most recently released Volume 2, The Triumphant Stories, Courage in Cannabis, Volumes 1 and 2. Some amazing books. You know, with Andrew D'Angelo talking about, you know, being kind, remembering the patient, putting them first. Dr. Bridget, you were one of the first people I met with that was a doctor in the program that I felt was a doctor in the program, right? There was a legit doctor in the program, wasn't Karnak just diagnosing me before I walked in the door. You talk about that. We're going to start to bring in some of the other guests as you start talking, Dr. Bridget, but I want to give you a moment to talk about the books, talk about the patient stories as we kind of push forward to the end of our issue 2 info session, bring in some other people and give everyone their closing comments.
Absolutely. You know, when I got into the space, I'm a family physician by trade. And when I started hearing these stories and understanding the struggles that people went through, the shame and the guilt that they dealt with because they were using cannabis before it was actually legal, I couldn't get away from how brave and courageous these people were. And not only that, but these stories would really help and propel others. And so we really created the Courage in Cannabis series so that we could give it to churchgoers, to be able to give it to legislators or your aunt that still doesn't understand what you do. And hopefully at the end of the day, so that people that were in this cannabis space that were looking to use this as a medication or just feel better about the use that they chose, that they didn't feel so alone. And we were a #1 book with our first book, and now going into our second book, which we just released August 1st, also being a #1. It's really about the patients. It's about not losing those stories as we move forward into a more social or recreational space, and that we keep that at the forefront of what cannabis is really about.
Here's what it is about right now. Tim Johnson, welcome back to the show from Cannabis Safety Verse, also heavily involved in our legislative measures here, working through this time. Gabrielle Dion is also here from MedicateOH.com. Let's go crazy. Let's do it right now. Let's bring in Kevin W. Roach, author of the Spring Creek Shake, another fellow off in there. Let's bring in Tyrone Russell, president of the Cleveland School of Cannabis. And why not, man? Let's do it all, people. It's like a game. It's like Matchmaker, the Brady Bunch. Something's happening on screen. Tim Johnson, you're currently center square in there in this version of the game. Here's one of the things I need to know, right? I am someone in Ohio's program, and I am a brave soul who will put it out there. I have smoked that cannabis I had purchased in the medicinal program. I don't I'm a rebel, Dottie. That's how I like to roll. I like that. When can I finally, if it passes, can I finally smoke my legal cannabis, Tim Johnson?
That's all I just want to touch real quick on patience. Yeah, patience first is what I've always said. So we're there, but we've covered that and so forth. Let's look for the future of insurance covering our medical cannabis for us. I think that's a big motivator. When you can first smoke, you can smoke now, BC, as far as I'm concerned. As far as when you can legally smoke, that time frame is yet to be set. Yes, the once issue 2 passes tomorrow, 30 days later, it will become a law. The problem is the law now has to have the rules have to be created or promulgated, so as far as the guidelines and so forth. So that could take some time. I look for it in 2024 for that to actually happen. There is a push against allowing you to smoke as an adult, but I'm pushing the opposite way with the legislators. So let's hope soon that'll happen. But for now, go ahead and fire up.
Go ahead and fire up. All right, let's go around the room. I'm going to get some closing thoughts. I'm going to start with Gabrielle Dion from MedicateOH.com. Gabrielle, let's bring you up to the big expanded box here. Give some closing thoughts, kind of what we're voting for issue 2. Let's get the folks riled up, and we'll go through the room and get everyone out of here for that.
For sure, yeah. Thanks, everyone. And this has been a really enlightening discussion, and I'm so excited for tomorrow. And I know we all are. We've all been in it for a long time. And it's time to see this go forward. At Medicaid OH, we believe cannabis is medicine for everyone. And we are going to continue reporting on it as cannabis, as medicine. So continue to check out our site. And I think I've got a little lag here, but check out our site, MedicateOH.com, and I hope that we will have some good news for you pretty soon.
I think we will. MedicateOH.com. We'll put all the links into there. Thank you, Gabrielle. You can hang out for a minute, but thank you for joining us. Let's bring in Kevin W. Roach. Kevin W. Roach, author of the Spring Creek Shake, right now available on Amazon. The Search for the Secret Appalachian Cannabis Culture. Kindle version now, hard copy coming soon. Instructor as well at the Cleveland School of Cannabis. Final thoughts on issue 2.
Wow, I've never had such an introduction. Yes, I do have final thoughts. That we have talked ourselves for, we have typed our hands bloody, we have shouted from the street corners and proselytized the internet, and it all leads up to tomorrow. We cannot rest on our laurels. We can't sit and pat ourselves on the back thinking the future is secure. Tomorrow, we have to show out in force and be heard, all right? Tomorrow is not the finish line, though it feels like it is, in fact, the starting bell of the new battle. Complacency will be our death. Now, the responsibility of history has fallen to us, and it is our duty to correct its course. This imperative is passed to us. By the way, I wrote this beforehand.
Yeah, we can tell. It's obvious.
Generations that have been denied this opportunity, and this awful weight has been given to us by the generations that have yet to come. And so that they can have the freedom to use cannabis in their coming day in the sun. I implore you to vote. I plead with you to encourage every person you know to come tomorrow to the polls and vote. Because tomorrow, you're going to go down to your local board of elections. You're going to go do your civic duty, your patriotic chore. You're going to go out in the street, and you're going to light up a joint knowing that you saved the republic, all right? This is your time to shine, and you got to do it, because each one of these votes counts.
With that, I think we got to bring in your boss, Kevin, Tyrone Russell, Cannabis. That's one of your teachers right there. How are we grading that pre-written speech?
I'm giving that a A+, actually.
Nah, I'm a harsh grader. That's no way. That's an A+.
Hey, it was passionate.
Well done, though.
Exactly.
Final thoughts, Tyrone.
No. I think, man, it really is it really is, for one, about the patients, but for two, it is about the freedom of people to choose how they choose to engage with the plant. Getting out and voting is probably one of the most American things you can do. So everything that Kevin said, agree 1000%. And what I will say is it's a lot larger. What we do at the Cleveland School of Cannabis is a lot larger than just simply putting people through school, but it is about bringing people together. It is about uniting folks behind this plant. A plant that I take absolutely seriously beyond just recreational use. I've seen it save people's lives. I've seen it change people's lives. I've seen it destroy people's lives by the way it's been treated. So I take it so seriously. So this issue for me isn't just about going out and smoking. It really is about giving people the ability to take control of their future and their lives. And I wish that people approach the polls with that, understanding that this isn't your grandfather's cannabis. It isn't your grandfather's weed, as the governor so passionately states. But because of that, there's a reason why we should take this seriously, move it forward, and allow people to move freely about the cabinet. So thank you.
Love it. Tyrone Russell, president, Cleveland School of Cannabis. Let's turn it over to Lenny Berry, a founder of the Ohio Cannabis Health and Business Summit. We had Lenny Berry on a recent episode. You can hear how he brought the Cannabis Summit. There's a reason health is in there along, and health came first, then business. So obviously, Lenny, putting together these conferences, it would be a big boost for the 2024 show for that. But how are you feeling about tomorrow? What are your final thoughts on issue 2?
I'm super excited. What I would like to say is, over this last few weeks, I've heard a lot of people say, cannabis isn't for me. I don't have a need for this levy or issue to pass because I don't smoke, and I don't want to see other people, using it from a recreational standpoint. But what I would like to say to those people, there are people in your family, there are friends of yours that really need this, right? And the access to this is something that is beneficial for them, healthy, living. So don't go at the polls thinking about yourself. Think about your people around you too. So that's my thing. Think about other people that could be using this as traditional or real medicine to help their issues, and just think about other people in your family and friends in that circle.
I love it. I love it. Someone who taught me to think about a lot of this stuff, Dr. Bridget Williams. Let's give you your final say. Where are we feeling for tomorrow? Are you excited? You go? And have you already cast your early vote? What do you like right now? You done?
No, I like going down and being with the people and having fun down at the polls. So I will be at my poll tomorrow. I have to say, I am excited. I spent the last several days on the Smoke Currency tour with Thunder Walker, visiting Michigan, seeing what they do, which is my home. And if we can get some of that excitement and freedom that we've been able to do in Michigan and bring it here to Ohio so that people don't have to worry about using it and have the freedom to grow, and not just grow as far as the plant, but grow as far as a state in what we do. If we can have less opioid deaths, if we can have less pain, and less anxiety, and don't have to worry about how it's done, let's go ahead and vote and get it done. It's demonizing a plant that we've got to have better things to do than that. So, vote and we'll have good things to talk about tomorrow.
If my text messages are an indication, some people don't have enough to do besides tell us to vote no. But we're going to vote yes tomorrow. We got 2 more folks to give their closing statements. Tim Johnson, Cannabis Safety Verse, really working on the legislative level. Been here the whole time. Our first guest today, helping us break it down. Final thoughts, sir, before we wrap up with one more, folks.
Final thoughts are vote yes for issue 2 tomorrow. Be patient after that and let us work on it at the State House with the legislators. I do request, I put a link out there, legislature.ohio.gov. Reach out to all the legislators and let them know your thoughts on helping us promulgate all the rules for creating the program. So thanks, everybody.
All right, one more solo shot, and then we'll bring the whole group back to say goodbye. Andrew D'Angelo from California, AndrewD'Angelo.com consulting. Check out Budding Minds episode 1 with Andrew D'Angelo on Because Cannabis YouTube. Final thoughts as we prepare tomorrow to go to the polls. I'm going to go early. I love that sticker that I get to showcase around all day. Final thoughts as Ohio prepares to vote. We could turn this tide, Andrew. 24, we're not quite 25, but we've talked. Ohio's a middle state. If we do this, then Pennsylvania, Indiana, Kentucky, right? Maybe Ohio could be that traditional swing state in adult use cannabis.
Yeah, it very well could be. So look, if you're a cannabis person of any stripe, patient, enthusiast, objective observer, drive everybody you know to the polls, go to the polls, vote yes, it's obvious. If you're not, right, if you're one of those folks Lenny mentioned that don't have cannabis in their lives, don't really want to see other people have cannabis in their lives, my question for you would be, do you want people to get locked up in prison for cannabis? Because that's the choice. Either we as a society tolerate folks who choose to have cannabis in their lives, having cannabis in their lives, or we lock them up in prison. Those are really the only two choices we have available to us. So unless you're a hardcore prohibitionist who honestly and authentically believes that the best use of your tax and enforcement dollars is to lock nonviolent cannabis prisoners in prison, then I guess you're going to vote no. But just about everybody else that is registered to vote in Ohio, even if you don't have cannabis in your lives, by all means vote yes, because you will empty your prisons and you will lower your taxes and you will increase what taxes are available for really helping people's lives.
All right, we got, well, actually, Dustin, I lied. I got one more. I feel like you have barely talked this last hour. There's so many people coming and going here. Dustin Kava, the co-host of the Because Cannabis podcast, brand new episodes every single Wednesday. We'll do a group shot here in the moment. Dustin, closing thoughts.
No.
Wow. Always a man of many words, that Dustin Kava. That's why we bring him the best co-host in the business, Dustin Kava, bringing that amazing insight every single week. All right, everyone, let's go around the horn. First of all, everyone that's listening right now, thank you for paying attention. Thank you for joining the Because Cannabis live stream special edition, the issue 2 Info Sesh. Every Wednesday, we have brand new episodes of the Because Cannabis podcast. A lot of these folks today have been guests. We continue to have amazing individuals who work in and around cannabis, the visionary plants, and so on. We also have a lot of great things that are going forward. So give us a subscription. We definitely appreciate that for sure as we continue. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. From Tim Johnson, who was the first person I reached out to. Thank you for helping me do this. Dr. Bridget Williams, Gabrielle Dion, Tyrone Russell, Lenny Berry, Andrew D'Angelo, Kevin W. wrote Spring Creek Shake. Check it out. I've read it. It's a great book. John Pardee, who is no longer, I was going to say he's no longer with us, but he just stepped away for a moment. He is enjoying his medicinal cannabis there. So thank you, all of you, for joining us today for this live stream special edition. We are on the precipice, everyone. We are on the verge of adult use cannabis in Ohio. I didn't think it would happen. I really have been a Debbie Downer about this, but I think talking with you 10 folks today and having this, I'm a little fired up right now. I am ready. I've been drinking coffee this whole podcast, though, so that's probably part of it. You know me, coffee and sativa, that's how I roll. We get going here, folks. We get up and we stay up. You stay up. You go vote issue 2 tomorrow. Everyone, thank you all for joining us today. I really appreciate you guys coming here, having this. We could not do this literally without you. So thank you all. Go vote issue 2. Go vote yes. Everyone, we'll see you guys next week. Thank you, everybody. Have a great time, everyone. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.